get deeper into that. And I was thinking that maybe we can do together the using the WordPress data layer course available in learn.wordpress.org, which I think is a great introduction to this data layer. And in the way that we do these different steps, we can comment each one of them. Yeah, I think this can be a good way to get introduced to the WordPress data layer. So, but before we get deeper into that, let's launch our WordPress installation and let's see what are we talking about when we talk about the WordPress data layer. So if we let me open we can use a tool like a Studio, and we can okay, let's create WordPress site data layer. We're going to create a new site from scratch, and we are going to use this site to interact with the data layer. Okay, so we have a clean WordPress installation, and when we go to the block editor, and block editor, by block editor we mean different pages, like for example this one is handled by the block editor because it's a page that goes around blocks. But not only this one, but also this one, the site editor. So yeah, there are several pages that use a layer to manage the data. So okay, let's open Scalidraw. Let's open a Scalidraw. Let's try to explain this better. I'm going to reset the canvas. Yeah. So we have WordPress installation. It's like the big container, and then inside some parts of WordPress use the block editor. Some parts of WordPress use the block editor. And those parts that use the block editor use what is called a data layer. And the data layer is composed by different stores. So let me make this nicer. I'm going to remove the strokes, and I'm going to add this here, and the same with this. I'm going to remove the strokes, and I'm going to add this here. And then this data layer is composed by what are called stores. So there's a store called core, there's another store called blogs, and yeah, there are several stores. So the way it works is that this data layer composed by different stores is like the source of truth for all the information that happens in the block editor. Any change we do in the block editor is reflected in some of these stores. So in this way, it's easier to let me see. in this way, it's easier to work with the blockator because there's a central point that we can always use as a reference. So how can we see these different stores? How can we see these core and blocks stores? So if we go to a WordPress installation and we go, for example, here to edit post, here if we go to the inspector, to the JavaScript inspector in the console, there's global object available, which is WP, and here we can see all the dependencies. These dependencies, some of them register a store. So for example, there is blocks, register a store, core data, register another store, block library, block editor. How can we see these stores? Well, we can see those stores by using a plugin in the browser called Redux. And here we can see all the stores that are registered for the block editor. Okay, there are duplicated because I have several pages open. So I think that if I do this, we will only see one store. Maybe I have more windows open there. Yeah, more windows. I'm going to close the other windows to see if we can just see. Okay, now it seems we have only one kind of each store, with the exception of this. For example, we have the core store, the core block editor, and if we go to core, we can see there is a state, and that state, as you can see here, it contains different information about the block editor or about WordPress. Here we can see, for example, the current user. We can see, for example, the entities, some entities. For example, we can see the posts, the pages, the attachments. We can see some information that we can access from JavaScript. So that's the main thing. The data layer provides also a way to interact with, let me lock this because I'm going to make this bigger. And if I'm going to make this another color. And this is the REST API. The REST API, and also we have here a database. Is there an icon for the database here? Can I look for? Can I search for the database's icons? And let me see if I can quickly. Database. Oracle close. I think these IT icons should contain a database. Yeah, database. Okay. So let's make this picture bigger. We have a database. We have the typical database of a WordPress installation that can be MySQL, MySQLite, or any other. Then we have the REST API, which provides different endpoints on every WordPress installation to interact with the database. how can we see those endpoints? So for example, if we go to our WordPress installation, something like let's check REST API WordPress. We have a handbook, and here we should see the URL. Where's the URL? Yeah, here. So is this. So if we go to Dolly.json, okay, in the context of the WordPress REST API routes, an example we made to the URL Dolly.json. It's a route, and then so why cannot I access to the REST API here? REST API, WordPress. Endpoint. Okay. Okay, maybe it's because of the. I see. It's because of the permalinks, because this is an installation. So if we go to permalinks, yeah, we need something like this. Okay. And with this, if we go to our WP-JSON, yeah. So we were here in our diagram, we have a REST API with a lot of endpoints, and those endpoints are well explained in the REST API reference. Here we have an explanation of all the endpoints available. So these endpoints allow us to interact with the database via different endpoints. But to avoid leading with this request, because there are some things to take into account when doing these requests, like nonces. Every time we do a request, if we use the, I'm going to make this bigger. So if we are here and we want to make a request to the REST API directly, which we can do, of course, we need to take some things into account, like nonces, which is security system that is in place to make these requests more secure. We go to the authentication. Yeah. So the REST API includes a technique called nonces to avoid CSRF issues, which is a type of attack of hackers. So it's kind of a validation that the request is done from the place is supposed. So yeah, we need to deal with this security layer, but also we need to take care of organizing all the information we get from the REST API, because once we get a response, we need to do something with that information. So the data layer provides a way to interact with the REST API with nonces already included. So let's make this. But this is these nonces are already included in the process, so we don't need to worry about them. We can use methods that are available in this data layer to interact with the REST API and interact with the database in a way that is optimal, because also it provides nonces. Let's okay, I'm going to put this here, and what we can do is I'm going to make this here to indicate that we need to take care of this on our own. Okay, so if we do the request manually, we need to manage the nonces into account, which is something that we can do. We can create the nonce via PHP, and then we can pass that to the JavaScript via some global variables, and we can include that nonce in the request. That's something we can do, but we can avoid all of that if we rely on this layer. If we rely on the data layer, because this also provides a cache system, so the requests to the REST API are only done when strictly necessary. So that's the advantage of using the data layer. And also we are using the same data layer that is used by the blockator. So if we interact with these stores, there will be an effect in the blockator. So we can read information from the blockator, but we can also change some of that information. So okay, so we have provided a brief explanation. Let's talk a bit more about this data layer. This data layer is composed by different stores, and these stores are Redux stores. This is a Redux store. Well, I'm going to put Redux with quotes because it's a WordPress version of a Redux store, but these are different Redux stores. And if we go to the documentation, we can see here more information about this. So let's read a little bit the documentation. So WordPress data module serves as a hub to manage application state for both plugins and WordPress itself, providing tools to manage data within and between distinct modules. It is designed as a modular pattern for organizing and sharing data, simple enough to satisfy the needs of a small plugin, while scalable to serve the requirements of a complex single application. Well, the thing is that the WordPress data module handles all the data for the block editor, so that's a complex single page application. The data module is built upon and shares many of the same core principles of Redux. But shouldn't be mistaken as merely Redux for WordPress. It includes a few of its own distinguished characteristics. Let's check some of these characteristics. But yeah, if you have worked with Redux, it's very similar. There are some like opinionated decisions, but it's very similar to work with Redux. So the thing about this WordPress data package is that it's used internally by the block editor, but we can also create a custom store for our plugin using the same principles. Let me put this. We can use the same principles to create our own store. So when we register a store and these principles apply to existing stores, we need to define like some elements. We need to define actions, which are the objects that change the state. Then we can define selectors, which are methods that read the state or return a portion of the state. And then we have resolvers which are coupled with selectors. And if we define a selector and a resolver with the same name, the resolver is the asynchronous version of the selector, and it will be triggered the first time the selector is called. We will see an example of this later. But when we call get price here, the first time it will run this resolver, it will make a request to the REST API, it will dispatch an action, so the state is updated, and once the state has been filled with the data, the next time the selector is called, it will directly get the information from the state. So this is one example of how the data fetched from the REST API is cached and is available for different requests to data without doing an extra request. Okay. So here we have the different elements. We have a reducer. A reducer is a function that accepts a previous state and an action and returns an updated state value. I don't know. Yeah, this is a reducer. It takes a state, it takes an action, and everything goes to reducer, and the reducer, taking into account the action, it returns an updated version of the state, and that updated version for the state will be the last version of the state. And we can see how the different actions that we define return an object, and depending on the properties of that object, a new state will be returned with different logic for each action. So a reducer is a function accepting the previous state and action as arguments and returns an updated state value. Then we have actions. The actions object should describe the actions object should describe all actions creators available for your store. An action creator is a function that optionally accepts arguments and returns an action object to dispatch to the register reducer. So we have actions. An action is the subject, but then we have action creators, which are functions that return an action object. And here we can have like a different logic. Yeah. Dispatching actions is the primary mechanism for making changes to your state. So when we want to change the state of the data layer of one of the stores, we dispatch an action. We dispatch one of the actions, and there are methods in WordPress data to do that. We can do dispatch, set price, and that will trigger some logic that will generate a new state, which will with new information. So yeah, dispatching actions is the primary mechanism for making changes to your state. And we have selectors. Selectors object include a set of functions for accessing and deriving state values. A selector is a function which accepts a state and optional arguments and returns some value from a state. So for example, here it receives the state, and depending on the specific logic, we return a specific value. This could be considered as derived state based on some values on the state. We return a calculated value, but yeah, we can return any portions of the state. The selector is a function which accepts state and optional arguments and returns some value from state. Calling selectors is the primary mechanism for retrieving data from your state and serve as a useful abstraction over the raw data, which is typically more susceptible to change and less readily usable as a normalized object. So yeah, when we want to get information from the state, we usually use selectors, which are prepared in a way that are self-descriptive. So for example, we don't go through all the state, because for example, if we go here, if we go to a post, we can see that the state here is a big object with a lot of options. So we usually generate some functions to get directly the information we want. So we don't need to navigate through the whole object to get the information. Okay, so we have a reducer, which is this function which kind of receives actions and returns a new state, returns a new state or a new version of the state. Then we have actions, which are the main mechanism to make changes of the state, to update the state. Then we have selectors, which are the main mechanism to get data from the state. And then we have resolvers. Resolvers is a side effect for a selector. If your selector result may need to be fulfilled from an external source, you can define a resolver such that the first time the selector is called, the fulfillment behavior is effective. So this is interesting, and we can see the effect. Okay, let's see this here. If we go to the console, select. Okay, I'm going to update. We can select core here. We can select core here, and we can see here all the actions that have been dispatched, and on every action there has been a change to the state. So for example, this action is of type finished resolution. So this action has passed through a specific reducer, which has generated a new state. We can see here the specific portion of the state that has been updated, and we can see the state, the final version of the state after this action has been executed. And as you can see, there are several actions, and if you think about this at the beginning, it may seem a bit complex, but then when the application grows, you have a standard way to get data and to update data, and you can ensure that the data is going to be the same because it's centralized in one place in a store. So it's a very convenient way to manage data, especially with React applications, because you have several components, and all these components have access to this store. So different components have always access to the latest version of the state. So it's a very good way to organize the data of an application, especially those which are complex. Okay, so I was saying that we're talking about resolvers and selectors. So let's try something first. If we go here and we do wp data dot select core. So the wp data, wp is the global object, data is the package. This could be this package, the WordPress data package, and then this package has a select method that, given a store descriptor, returns an object of the store's selectors. So as we mentioned before, when we register a store, we define several selectors, and those selectors we can access to them by using the select method of the data package. So this is the syntax. We do select the name of the store, and then we have access to all the selectors. So for example, if we do this, here I can see all the selectors that are available for the core package. So these selectors are like shortcuts to access this information. As you can see, there's a lot of information here, but to make this easier for the developer, we have this bunch of methods. So one method, get entity records. One method that we can use is get entity records, and we can see here in the documentation of the core store. And the core store, WordPress data is like the the main package that provides all the mechanisms to create stores and to access all the selectors and dispatchers from the stores. But then the stores are actually, we can see this here, data module reference. Then we have the WordPress core data, which has the namespace core, and this is the one we have access here, core. And here we have a bunch of methods, like for example, get entity records. Get entity records. So we have a kind name. Get entity records actually has like different versions. I don't know the exact name, but is when you define a function to accept different parameters. I think it's over something. So here in the documentation we have these parameters, but it can actually start with kind and name. So for example, we can ask the store to get all the entity records for the kind post type and the name page to get a list of all the pages. So we can do that here. We can do post type, or is post type? I think it's like this, and then page. Okay. And if we go here, okay, so this is interesting. So we have done this request. We have called a selector, but we haven't received any information. Why? Because the get entity records is a selector that has a resolver. And the first time it's called, the resolver is triggered. And the resolver is the one that is actually doing this request to the REST API. It's actually calling to pages and is getting all the pages that are available, which in this case is only one. And if we go to the store, we can see that there has been an action called finish resolution, which has been triggered by the resolver. The resolver has done its request, and when it has finished successfully, it has triggered this action, finish resolution of the get entity records of this, to indicate that the resolver has been executed, not to indicate that the resolver attached to this selector has been already executed and has successfully completed its operation. So the next time we ask for the selector, we get the information we were asking for. This has a specific workaround when we work with selectors in React. So we will see that later, and it's actually one of the things that are covered in the course. But yeah, this is interesting about selectors, and it's explained here in the docs. So we were checking the select resolver. So a resolver is a side effect for a selector, and it says if your selector result may need to be fulfilled from an external source, you can define a resolver such that the first time the selector is called, the fulfillment behavior is affected. So this is what has happened here. The first time the selector has been called, but the second time the selector has checked if the resolver has finished, and it has checked, mm, it has access to that information because it has dispatched an action that has updated metadata in the state. And that metadata here, it contains information about the operations themselves. And here we can see that the specific get entity records has like the resolver has ended successfully. So we were here. Yeah. So the resolvers option should be passed as an object where each key is the name of the selector to act upon. So when we define resolvers for a selector, they should share the same name, like here get price and get price. Yeah. The value, a function which receives the same arguments passed to the selector, excluding the state argument. So the arguments that receive the selection are the same than the selector, but the state. Because the state is we can access with the functions that are passed. Here the resolvers are using what are called thanks in Redux. And thanks are a type of function that allow us to perform asynchronous operations, but also to have access to the key elements we need to do some of these operations. So there is more information about this thanks in core data here. And we can see that before thanks there was a thing called control. So asynchronous operations were defined in the form of this yield thing. So that means that meant that we had to define an additional element to perform that asynchronous operation, which were the controls thing. But now with the thanks, we can avoid having to define this additional element, and we can do the asynchronous operations directly in the action or in the resolver. Yeah. So here's more information about that. So yeah, when we define a resolver, by default, the create store, the create Redux store includes a middleware that understand this type of definitions. So it will take care of this. So we can define a resolver that receives an item and returns a function that has access to dispatch, select, registry, and some others. And here we can do whatever we want. We can do synchronous operations, we can do dispatches, and whatever. So in this case, when the selector is executed the first time, this resolver is executed and all these operations are performed. There is a specific request to the REST API, and with the result, with the response we get from the REST API, we update the state. So that's what happened here. Okay. Okay. Titus in Atlantis says, very informative, thanks for the stream. Looking forward to catching the rest of YouTube later. So let me, hi Titus. So yeah, I'm I'm quite new with all these chat things, but little by little, I promise I'll get better. And at some point, I will include this chat in the streams, like the professional people do. Okay, so we were saying, yeah, we were talking about selectors and resolver. Hey Ryan, thank you. You are doing great every stream. I'm going to show the stream here. I know I cannot show the stream. Yeah, that's something I need to solve because I have OBS not to be displayed in the screen, and I have the stream. I don't know. I have to learn about how to show the stream. But yeah, thank you, Boomi Pipalia for the words, and thank you Ryan again for being there. Okay, so we were saying we're talking about selectors and resolvers, and I think that we were here. Yeah, the resolvers option should be passed as an object where each key is the name. Okay, Jan Makel, thank you. It says yes, this is definitely a powerful breakdown. Thank you indeed. Okay, any questions that you have of all these things that I'm talking about? Feel free to ask in the chat, and I'll be happy to cover that, and we can explore that together. I will go ahead as I think it's interesting to continue. Yeah, I think it's interesting to check a little bit the documentation because it has great insights. So we were saying about resolvers. The resolvers option should be passed as an object where each key is the name of the selectors to act upon. So yeah, this means that the name of the resolver should be the same than the select. Then the value of the resolver should be a function, should be the value of the resolver should be a function that receives the same arguments passed to the selector, excluding the state argument. It can then dispatch as necessary to fulfill the requirements of the selector, taking advantage of the fact that most data consumers will subscribe to subsequent state changes by subscribe or with select. Yeah, this is really interesting. Because if we go here, we can see that this effect is not really what we would expect in a React application. So if we ask for the for some portion of the state, if we call a selector and we don't get that information, then without any other tool, we will need to, I don't know, add some logic and maybe do this this call again after the first time if we know that this is how it works. But this makes sense because there is a thing called use select that is available in the WordPress core package. Use select, which is a hook. It's a hook of React, so this only makes sense in a React component context. But the thing with this hook is that we can do select operations inside of this use select, and we can return specific values. So inside of the use select, we have a function that receives the select method, and we can access any store, and we can return specific values from a selection from that store. And the thing is that once we do this inside of the useSelect, internally there is a subscription to the elements that generate this value. That means that every time the state is updated in a way that could affect this value, this value will get updated and it will generate a re-render of the React component. So in this case, if we do this inside of a useSelect, the first time we'll get nothing, but the state will be updated, and that will provoke a second time. That will provoke that the value is returned with the expected value properly, and it will generate a render of the React component. So it will be transparent for the final developer, this thing of resolvers and selectors, and actually it makes a lot of sense. It's a good way to organize things. We have a selector. If we need to do a first request to get information from the database, the first time the selector is called, we call the resolver, but because we are meant to use these selects inside of a useSelect, all of that behavior doesn't matter to us, because at the end we will get the value when the information is there. And yeah, that's the recommended way of dealing with selects. So that's the thing that was. We were reading the resolvers. Yeah, this is what he was mentioning here. It can then dispatch as necessary to fulfill the requirements of the selector, taking advantage of the fact that most data consumers will subscribe to subsequent state changes. Yeah, this is exactly what's happening with the useSelect. And then it says, resolvers in combination with thanks can be used to implement asynchronous data flows for your store. And thanks are this thing here. So thanks is a middleware that we can actually be a bit freaky, and we can check it. If we go to the package data, we go to the package data, and we go to if we go to the how's the create registry, I think. Create registry. Let me create registry. Yeah, I think it's this one. Create registry. No, from registry. I think this is one. No, what I'm going to look is middleware here, where I really what I want to here inside the data, I want to ask for middleware. This is what I was looking for. No, this is not what I was looking for. Yeah, Redux store index. Yeah, and here instantiate Redux store, and here we can see how every time we use the create Redux internally, it's calling this function, and this function internally is adding all these middlewares. And here you can see how it's adding this thank middleware. This thank middleware is the one that is actually making possible this syntax. So it's understanding that we can define a resolver, returning a function that can be asynchronous, and those functions will receive a set of elements, which are dispatch, select, and some others, I think registry, and we can do all kinds of operations asynchronously. Then we can dispatch, and because these resolvers or the selectors are meant to be used inside of a useSelect, then the whole machine will work, because the final value will get updated in the React component, and the React component will be re-rendered. So yeah, this is resolvers. Then we have controls. This is something to take into account, because controls are deprecated, but there are still some mentions to controls in the documentation. So be aware of this, that this is the... I'm not sure if it's not the recommended way, or if it's if it doesn't work. I haven't tested that. It may work still, but with controls you need to add an extra element, and with thanks it's easier, because with controls you have to use generators, which are a bit more difficult to grasp, and with thanks we just use async and wait syntax, which I think most of JavaScript developers are used to use. So yeah, be aware of this, that we don't need to add controls anymore. Just to give you some context about that, I have a diagram. Let me so we have this here. Let me see if I can find a diagram so you can see how this used to work with controls. Okay, so this is the diagram. So this is the Redux flow with WordPress data using controls. So there are some things that are still working in this way, but some others are usually work in a different way, because we have thanks. But for example, if we have an action that doesn't require any specific effect, or like an asynchronous operation or an external API call, the way it works is that we have an initial state. To change the state, we call an action creator. So in our example, the action creator would be, for example, this one, set price, which returns a specific action. And that action will be dispatched, which directs the logic to a reducer, and this reducer is this one, which is taking the object, and depending on the properties of the object, we return a different state that creates a new state. But with controls, and this is an example of a control, we have a generator function that yields specific elements. Remember, I'm talking about like the old way of doing things. Now with thanks, it's easier. So we have a state. To change the state, we call an action, but the action creator, we are able to, if the finance generator yields will be handled by control, we can use the control to do different asynchronous operations like request to the API or so on. We can yield several times, and then with the final result, we return an action like this with the data that we got from those asynchronous operations. And that directs the logic to a reducer that creates a new state. So that's for action. Then for selectors, to get a slice of the state, we use a selector, and the selectors with resolvers. The first time, if there is a side effect needed, we can define a resolver attached to a selector, and the first time the selector is called, the fulfillment behavior is affected. So the first time we call the selector, if there is a resolver, the resolver is triggered. But previously, we had to use controls to manage these different asynchronous operations with different yields, and then with the result, we trigger an action that directs the logic to the reducer that creates a new state, and that state is the one that will be used by the selector the second time. But now we don't need to use the selectors, because the resolver itself or the action creator itself can use thanks, and those thanks are are like this. So we have an action creator that returns another function, an async function, which we have access here to dispatch, select, and several things, like for example here. And we can do all sorts of operations, and then finally we can dispatch something specific. This is in the case of a resolver. But here we can do some operation to return some data. So yeah, this is about thanks. And then finally, so yeah, here you have some more information about controls, and here, this is as a curiosity, you can have a look at that, but focus on using thanks. And then for the store, we have an initial state, which is an object which defines the initial state of the store. Okay, so this is what we have available. We have reducer action selectors. Most of the time we will be dealing with selectors and actions that can be dispatched. So yeah, let's go to the tutorial of using the WordPress data layer, which I think is very interesting. So I think that we have already created project data layer, so we can open this in Visual Code. We can open, yes, it was there. Okay, so we have our WordPress site, and what we can do here is we can create a new plugin that is going to be WordPress data layer app pages. So So this is our plugin. And then inside we are going to create a plugin. And here we can add like the header of the plugin. And if we go to the plugin handbook, we should see the basic header somewhere. Header requirements. Yeah, so this is plugin name. WordPress data layer app pages. So if we go to our WordPress installation, we should see this plugin here. Yeah, WordPress data layer app pages. Perfect. So let's continue with the. So we have here my first Gutenberg app PHP to create a new admin page. We have called ours plugin PHP, and then we have an index, style, and a package JSON. Let's start with the PHP part. So if we go little by little, we are going to say WordPress data layer app pages, and yeah, stream February. Okay. Then we have manage options. My first Gutenberg app. Let's call this WP data WP data layer app pages. So in theory, with this action, and we need to add this, and in theory we should see if we enable the plugin. If we enable the plugin, we should see here like a new option, but we cannot see anything else. So we have registered this option of the menu, and then we can add this logic. We can add this logic to enqueue the scripts. Okay, so I have changed the IDs, so I'm going to change the references. So as we have registered this page with this ID, I think then we have we can admin enqueue scripts, and we can detect which page is being loaded, and so we can only load these assets in this specific page. So what we're saying here is that we want to load these dependencies only in this page. And in order to do that, we are checking the build asset. So what we are going to do is We are going to go to plugins, no, to content, plugins, web data, and we are going to npm init, and we have a package JSON here. Okay, and what we are going to do is we are going to install the WordPress scripts package. If we go to the documentation, block editor, if we go to the documentation, we have a getting started guide of the scripts package, and we can see how two fundamental scripts we can use are these ones, start and build. So let's copy this, then let's go here. Okay, so with this we can create here an src folder. Inside we can create an index folder. So this package is encapsulating a lot of functionality, including Webpack. So we can create bundles from the code we define here in the JavaScript files. So what we can do here, if we go to the JavaScript, this is our JavaScript. Okay, render, I think that this has changed. It's now create something, and I'm not sure that this is needed, so I'm going to. So, okay, so I have another. If we go to Dolby Training Team Data Views, this is another example of a React application in the admin. And here in the index, we can see how it uses, it's very similar. We can use these packages. What I'm going to use is the ID. Okay. Yeah. So we are going to do this. We have updated that. We have actually a DOM ready package that provides this function. So when the DOM is ready, we can execute this. And then the updated way of creating a node we can use to hydrate our React application is this method, create root, render is deprecated. So what we do is we create a node with create root using an existing DOM element, in this case an element with the ID, this one, and because this is what we have defined here, and then we render the app, then we hydrate our app, an app that we haven't defined yet, but we will define soon. So we have the index, then we have the style CSS, then we have the style CSS. So a copy. Okay, this is a style CSS that we can also place here, style CSS. And if we run npm start, as we have defined here, we will trigger this command wp scripts start. That what will do, it will look for any index inside src folder, and it will generate a build version of that. So start, and we have some errors here. Yeah, we have some errors because the app is not created. So what we're going to do for now is to just create a very simple React component to hydrate that for now. Okay, and now it works. And we can see how we have in the build folder the bundle, which includes anything we need to run this script in any browser. So it's using Ecmax script 5 for this build version of the script. But then we also have the index asset, which includes the dependencies of this index.js. And this is because a lot of these packages are already loaded in WordPress. So in order to load them twice with this dependencies asset, WordPress directly use what is already loaded, and this is how it's done. And then we have the source map that allow us to access. So this is the file that is going to be executed, but we can access this origin file for debugging purposes, for example. So so yeah, we have this build file. Then we have this style CSS that we have here. If we copy this here, we need to adjust the IDs. So I'm going to change all these references. So this style CSS is not being generated in the build folder, and the code here, what we are saying is, so this first part is it should work, because what we are saying is, okay, the asset file that is in the plugin path and in this specific path is build index asset PHP, which is this one. So for every asset found here, for every asset, enqueue the styles. So all the styles, all the related styles are loaded, and then we register the script. We register the script that is in build index.js, with the specific dependencies that are already here, and with a specific version that is automatically generated here. Perfect. We register the script with this handle, and then we enqueue the script. But then we do the same with the style. And in this case, okay, in this case, we are not button form error, form buttons. Okay, let's do one thing. What's happening here is that we are loading the CSS directly from the src folder, which from plugins, no, because the style CSS should be in the root of the, yeah. So it's in the root of the folder. Well, we can put this in the root of the folder, but I think that a more elegant way would be to import. Okay, let's do one thing. We are going to convert this into SCSS. We are going to import this file here. So we want to say import style SCSS. Because we have imported this file, we have generated this build file. So what we're going to do is we are going to load this version that is in the build folder. And the good thing of using SAS is that we can apply some SAS syntax, such as, for example, we can put this here. And we can put this here. And then we can do this. What else? That we can also do this. We can also do this. I'm not sure if I need to use the ampersand. We can check this. Let me see. We should see this in the generated file. So for buttons, button, and for buttons, component spinner. For buttons, button, and for button. Okay, so this is working well. Then we have app pages, list controls. Okay, let me see. Yeah, so this is duplicated. We can put this here, and then we can put this here. Oh. Okay, so here what we can do is I think this is how we can do this. Okay, form buttons, button, component spinner, top level. Okay, so I don't know, we can check this later. So we have the styles and we have this. Okay, perfect. So in theory, I think that we should have the styles properly loaded in our application. IT Duso Suite is still going? Yeah, still going. I think we have like 15 minutes left, but yeah, the recording will be available in YouTube. So yeah, you can check this later. Okay, so if we reload, we should see the app, and we should also see, okay, let me refresh this. JavaScript files, we can see the data layer app pages build index. And then we can check the CSS, and yeah, you can see that we have the styles also loaded. So this is working well, and I think that we have everything. Yeah, here we have some more information in the packaging, but we don't really need them. And yeah, so I think this is more or less covered. We have the main plugin file, we have the JavaScript file, the styles, and the packaging. So yeah, let's go to the next lesson. So in this lesson, we are going to learn how to fetch WordPress data. And here is where, let's copy and paste this in the index. So here we have a React component that it's creating an array of just one element with ID and title, and is passing that array to another component called pages list, which will receive this array of objects, and it will map each one of the objects on the array, and it will return a specific li item. So okay, if we, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this into the main app, which is going to be loaded here, and in theory we should see this element here. Yeah, we have we can see now the sample page. But now we want to populate the list with real data. So let's read this. So the hard-coded sample page is very useful. We want to display your actual WordPress pages. So let's fetch the actual list of pages from the WordPress REST API. Before we start, let's confirm we actually have some pages to fetch. Yeah, we can create some more pages here. We can go to pages, and we can create new page, about page. Then we can create another page called we can create a page called what happened here? Oops. What's happening here? We have these pages. Okay, I'm going to try to create a new one. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but anyway, we have 2 pages. For now is enough for what we want to test. Okay, so let's dive into the code. We will take advantage of the WordPress core data package, which provides resolvers, selectors, and actions to work with the WordPress core API. WordPress core data builds on top of the WordPress data package. So to fetch the list of pages, we will use the get entity records selector. In broad strokes, it will issue the correct API request, cache the results, and return the list of records we need. So remember this diagram. It will do the request to the database, and it will return the results. It will cache them, and it will put them in the proper store, so it's available from the selectors. Mhm. So if we, where were we? Here. So what we can do is access the data package, the select method of the data package, select a specific store, which is the core data, and then access one of the selectors, which is get entity records, and we can pass the kind, in this case post type, and then the specific post type. Okay. If you run that following snippet in your browser DevTools, you will see it returns null. Why? The pages are only requested by the get entity records resolver after first running the selector. If you wait a moment and rerun it, it will return the list of pages. So this is what we did earlier. We can do that again to see the effect. So we can select this and we can come here. Okay. Need to select here. No, this is fine. Okay, because this is not the page, we need to go to a page that has actually the data package available. For example, this one. Okay, we go here, we get null because the first time the resolver is triggered, but the second time we have access to the pages. Perfect. So similarly, the component needs to rerun the selector once the data is available. So we do that with the use select hook, which we also commented that earlier. So we can include this in our app. This is in my first app. We need to import this information here. Perfect. So what we're doing is we are using the use select hook, which will receive a function that receives the select, and we can return values. We can return just one value or an object of values, and all the elements in the state that are required to get this return value are going to we're going to subscribe to any update on those of those values. So every time the state changes affecting those values, we will get this function will get executed, and it will return a new value of pages that will provoke the render of the page. So that's what we really want here. So that's very handy. Now we are accessing the real pages in the store or in the block editor, and if we save and we go to our application, okay, so we are having an error here. Okay, there is an error with the we have or use the non-minified domain for full errors and additional helpful warnings. Okay, so so function app identity const app equal this and this and this. Okay, so what could be happening here? I'm going to close this. We can close this. Select core data store, get into the record. We are passing an empty array, and then we are so this should work. This should work. I think this is okay. And then okay, so it says minified React error for the full message. Access here or use the non-minified dev environment for full error. So let's start doing this. What we can do is in the config, we can pass here like a script in the back. I think this gets us the non-minified version of the application. So let's go back. Let's see. So this works, but this doesn't, right? Yeah. And then we have here import use select as WordPress data, and this. So first time is null, and second time is the pages, and I see. So yeah, what I think is happening is the format we are using here is not correct. So let's go back and let's check the format. So for every that's the thing. For every object we have an ID, which is correct, but the page title is, it has like the row and the render. So we need to do here rendered, for example. Okay, so here now it should work. Yeah, that was the thing. Okay, so let's adjust this a little bit. And this should work now. Perfect. Okay, so I think we can leave the session here. We can finish the session here, and we can continue in a few weeks with this project. But yeah, the recording of the session will be available on YouTube, and yeah, feel free to send me a message in my Twitter or as a comment in the video, so I can take them into account in the next session. Okay, perfect. So yeah, see you any other week. Okay, bye.